Hi, good morning and welcome everyone. My name is Charles Kapoor, President and CEO of the Greater Reston Chamber of Commerce, and I'd like to welcome everyone this morning to the second in our annual series of the 2021 legislative series produced by the Greater Reston Chamber of Commerce. Today, we are excited to provide you all an informative morning with representatives from the VEDP and Feedback Advisory to share with us how to leverage Virginia's international BizDev resources. Today's event is produced in conjunction with our Public Policy Committee, including our co-chairs, Mark Looney of Cooley and Joey Musmar of Miller Musmar CPAs. Before we get started, as we do with all of our Greater Reston Chamber of Commerce events, I'd like to take an opportunity to recognize our annual sponsors. And here you see our strategic sponsors, our visionary sponsors, and our advocate sponsors. Thank you to these great firms who support the Chamber's year-long programmings and events throughout the year. I'd also like to take this opportunity to recognize our legislative series sponsors who specifically make it possible for us to produce these events throughout the year. You see Comcast Business, Innova, Miller Musmar CPAs, Sandy Spring Bank, and Walsh Colucci, Lubley & Walsh. Thank you to these great companies for supporting our legislative series. It's now my pleasure to welcome Ellen Meinhardt, who will be leading today's discussion. Ellen serves as International Trade Manager for the Virginia Economic Development Partnership's Northern Virginia office, where her mission is to assist companies with increasing sales revenue through exporting. Prior to joining the VEDP, Ellen ran Starting Gate Global, an outsourced business development company where she executed market entry and growth strategies for international companies entering the US. Ellen, the floor is yours.
Outside the United States is 73% of the world's purchasing power, 87% of the world's economic growth, and 95% of the world's consumers. Yet less than 5% of US companies sell internationally. I want to repeat that because I think these are important statistics. Outside the United States are 73% of the world's purchasing power, 85% of the world's economic growth, and 95% of the world's consumers, yet less than 5% of US companies sell internationally. Before the pandemic, the global middle class was growing by about 200 million per year for the next several years. This is significant because this new middle class, they can do international travel, they can pay for better education, they can buy more consumer goods, and the countries where they live are going to need things like satellite communications, smart highways, and everything else that comes with a more sophisticated economy. Somebody's going to sell to these people in these countries, and it should be Virginia companies who have world-class products and services. So good morning. As you heard, my name is Ellen Meinhardt. I'm an International Trade Manager with Virginia Economic Development Partnership. What the heck does that mean? Basically, my job is to help primarily small and medium-sized businesses pursue international markets and make sure that they're leveraging all of Virginia's outsourced international business development resources that you're going to learn about today. I encourage you, my hope is that you're either a Virginia company that's maybe thinking about international, or you have clients that could possibly pursue international markets. I encourage you to reach out to me. I will make sure wherever they are in the state of Virginia that they are getting help by myself or one of my colleagues who can help them take advantage of all the resources that you're going to hear about. Before I start, I just wanted to let you know, especially if you have clients, what type of qualifications that companies that may have that are sort of eligible rather to pursue international markets. If you've got clients, or if you're a company that has intellectual property, if you are growing like crazy here in the United States, most likely that means that somewhere outside of the United States would be interested in your product or service. If you're a CEO that wants to grow your company super fast, you definitely should be thinking about international markets. Or if you're selling internationally and you're not using our services, please, I encourage you to reach out to us. And we look forward to helping you and just making this whole international sales process a lot easier and a little bit cheaper than you could do it on your own. So before I start, a lot of people are like, why does the state of Virginia use tax dollars to help Virginia companies pursue international markets? And I will tell you, essentially, statistically speaking, companies that sell internationally have a 17% higher profit margin, and they pay their people about 15% more, which just means more taxes for the state of Virginia. So that's really the simple answer. And I'm just going to show you, unfortunately, exporting statistics are a little old, but just to show you, exporting supports about 257,000 jobs. And at the time frame between 2000 and 2014, it was provided 30% of the economic growth of Virginia. And it had, in 2014, resulted in about $2 billion in taxes. So it's significant. In Virginia, we're a little unusual. We're about 50-50 product and services in terms of exporting. And then just for my organization, which is international trade within BDP, in 2019, we worked with about 329 Virginia companies, on average about 7.9 million in export sales. That's a little skewed. We were working with a very big company, so that's a bit skewed. I work with a lot smaller companies. And then it supported about 49,000 jobs here in Virginia. But today, my main goal is to make sure everyone understands the international business development resources available to Virginia companies. They are strategic, and they are going to help you, just like I said, make things a little bit easier and quicker and a little cheaper as you pursue international markets. We have three main resources. So customize international research, outsource international business development, and grants and specialized programs. And I'm going to talk about each one of those today and try to give you some examples so you can understand how to take advantage of each of those resources. And I'm going to start with customized international research. We do that because we want to help companies figure out where in the world they should be selling. And once we figure out where in the world they should be selling, make sure that they're smart when they're going in and pursuing those markets about what's going on there. So we have two ways of doing customized international research. I have a team in Richmond that does customized research with secondary data. What I mean by secondary data is that we subscribe to a bunch of really great databases that are more expensive for the average small or medium-sized company. And our researchers are actually going through it and doing the customized research on your behalf. So just recently, I have a company that does basically physical security of buildings. They have grown organically, and they have clients like Google and Disney and Facebook. So their primary target are big enterprise clients that have campus-like environments. And for the first time, they're going to actually proactively pursue a market, and they've decided to go after the UK. So one of my wonderful researchers, and we have a great database called Global Data Construction. She went in that database. They had some criteria. They wanted design and pre-design phase of the construction process. They wanted 17,000 square meters of space or above, and they were targeting the UK. So she pulled projects that were going on in the UK. We ran them by the client, and they decided which ones that they wanted additional data on. So she was able to pull a profile for each of those construction projects with the architect, with the project manager, and all sort of the organizations that were involved with this construction project, so they can use that as a target list. So that's one example of customized research that my team here in Richmond can do. The other way we do customized international research is through our contractor network. And let me just pull that up. And you will be hearing from Kieran, who is our contractor in India, who works for a company called Feedback Consulting. But we have contractors now in 83 countries around the world. And I tell my clients, think about them as your outsourced international business development team around the world, that you've got an office in 83 countries that can help you understand the market and also do business development for you. So a recent project with one of my clients, so I have a client that does backup power supply for data centers. And one of their big data center clients is building a data center in Brazil, and would love my client to have their backup power supply. But as a lot of you may or may not know, Brazil is a closed economy and makes it very difficult for other countries and companies to sell into Brazil. They put a lot of taxes and tariffs on every product. So my client needed to understand how much could he even sell into Brazil and make any money. So my Brazilian contractors classified his product for him and then figured out the landed costs. And I'm going to just read you what landed costs are, because There's a lot involved. Landed cost is the total price of a product or shipment once it has arrived at the buyer's doorstep. The landed cost includes original price of the product, transportation fees, customs, duties, taxes, tariff, insurance, currency conversion, crating, handling, and payment fees. So our Brazilian contractors are going to figure that out for my client so he can decide if he can actually sell into the market. And then another really interesting thing they're doing in Brazil, if the product or service is not being made in Brazil, sometimes you don't have to pay all these tariffs and taxes that they require. So they're starting to look at that process as well. So I just want to give you an example of the work our contractors can take off of you. And you basically pay a very minimum fee, $250, and they are going to do this unbelievable research. So you can figure out, number one, if you want to even pursue the market, and number two, if you do, really understand the market so you're well positioned to be successful there. And I just want to show you our wonderful pictures of wonderful contractors. You're going to hear a little more from Kieran soon, but these are I consider our most valuable resource, and they're there to help Virginia companies really be successful internationally. So I encourage you to take advantage of them. So our second major, so I talked about the international customized research. Our second biggest resource is outsource international business development resources. And we do that in a variety of ways. We go to trade missions. You're going to hear about our India trade mission. Essentially, a trade mission is a week's worth of customized meetings on behalf of your company. Trade shows, you'll see our trade show and trade mission calendar. We go to trade shows around the world, a lot of defense trade shows. We go to a cyber trade show, aerospace trade shows. It's a chance for you, they're often very expensive, and it's a chance for you to exhibit there and to see if you'd like to eventually exhibit there in the future. And independent market visits, all that means is wherever we have a contractor, you saw our countries all over the world where we had contractors, you can go at any time and get customized meetings by our contractors. They just need about an 8-week lead time so they can go through the business development process in order to get you those meetings. So now I'm going to quickly overview our India trade mission. Then Kieran is just going to give you a lot more sort of the in-depth of all the work that goes into making these successful. And then also talk to a little bit about what he believes are some key factors of being successful in India and what type of opportunities there are for US companies in India. I was lucky to be able to lead our last in-country trade mission to India. I had 7 Virginia companies with me. In 1 week, we went to Delhi, Bangalore, Mumbai. All the companies had meetings, custom-made meetings for each one of those in each of those countries. All their logistics was taken care of, their hotels, their drivers, their flights. Every company had they had such a great experience. Every meeting was a meeting that they was qualified and what they were interested in. All the logistics ran smoothly, and Kieran and his team did that for us. But I just wanted to also quickly tell you about some success stories, because these trade missions can really be a game changer, especially for small and medium-sized companies who couldn't. It would be very difficult for them to do what Kieran's team did for them. So I am just going to tell you about 2 successes that came out of the India trade mission. If you see this large man in the white shirt and black pants, that is Sean Springs. If you're a football fan, he played for the Washington Redskins and Ohio State. He is now a CEO of a company called Winpact Technologies, and they do impact protection technology. Essentially, their secret sauce is they have a bunch of PhDs in material science who have come up with a software that can classify foam, essentially. So any type of impact can be put into the software, and they can figure out the ideal way to protect your head or your body or whatever it is, whatever impact that they're looking at. So in India, Kieran's team got them a great meeting with a former professional cricket player who is now manufacturing high-end cricket equipment. They went through the entire sales process with this man, and they did a prototype of a cricket helmet. They were able to make that cricket helmet 35% more protective than the former one. They closed the deal in December. They shipped their equipment there. They sent an engineer to train on how to manufacture all the impact protection that they have to need for the helmet. And what's I think even more exciting, well, everything's exciting, but WinPak only produced this in China before. So they only had a Chinese manufacturer besides the United States. Now they've got a manufacturer in India. Another opportunity they got from this trade mission was they met somebody that does helmets for riot gear police. And that company since then has quadrupled its manufacturing space. They're working on that. They're working on that sales. They're hoping to close that sales. And now they have a manufacturing facility in India that will be able to handle that as well. So there's all sorts of great things that came from that win. And I just quickly will tell you about another win that I think is exciting too. You see the woman in the green, that is Lauren Bryant. She works for a company called Stryker, which was formerly 12. They're an online education company in Fairfax County. They have about 4,300 people, and they're headquartered in Fairfax. They had divested of their international business and decided to get back into it and decided to use the India trade mission as a way to kick off their international sales in India. And they closed the deal as well. And in January, they are trialing their online education software in 20 private schools based on the meetings that they had in India. So these are great opportunities. Kieran's going to go a little bit about how in the heck they make their magic and make this all work for Virginia companies, and then talk a little bit about India in general and the opportunities there. Kieran works for Feedback Consulting, and in addition to the business development, what he's going to talk about, they are a world-class marketing firm as well, and they produce unbelievable marketing research about the India market. So, Kieran.
Yep, thank you very much, Ellen. It's a pleasure talking to all of you. Thank you for this opportunity. Just quickly, like Ellen said, just a couple of things in terms of what we have done for the trade mission. Of course, it always starts by trying to understand the company itself in terms of what is the kind of product that they have or the kind of services that they have. I think that's the most important aspect, is to understand the product and the services and have a very clear mindset in terms of what is it that the company is intending to do in any particular market as such. It's not only about India, but it can be, of course, any new markets that you don't want to talk about. With regards to the mission, we start off by understanding that objective very clearly first in terms of what is it that they intend to do, whether they want to set up a partnership, whether they want to look at selling the products and services directly, or they want to meet some end customers, or what is it that they intend to do in particular markets as such. So after that, we of course have very close interactions with those companies directly in consultations with the trade managers, and come out with a list of some of the potential companies which can be partners or end customers, in which we also give a basis of why we have selected a particular set of companies as such. Once, of course, that has been clear, we then try and explain and talk to those India counterparts and try and understand whether they are interested in meeting these companies. I think the most important aspect for any particular trade mission to be successful is really to really not have too much of expectations. And that is something that I normally tell any of the companies who come and visit India as such, that the first visit will always a no expectations visit as such. So if you look at all the 7 companies that have come in here earlier last year, just before the pandemic struck us, they had very meaningful meetings. I think all the companies, we had about close to 100 meetings in that particular 1 week for all the 7 companies. So I'm talking about 10 to 15 meetings across. I think the other part also about all these companies are they're willing to really go on an extra mile, because what happens is when you're talking to a lot of people in a day, it kind of tends to get a lot of findings, and it is always important that they have an open mind and they're willing to really learn and understand how the markets work. So any particular first visit that happens should be more of a no expectation visit. Like Ellen mentioned, of course, we have got 2 fantastic case studies which were big successes, but I think the reason they were big successes also was that after they did these meetings, they were able to follow up with those companies and try to see in terms of how can the lead be pushed forward. And because of that instance, they were able to really qualify and then try and get their businesses expanded in these in the Indian market as such. So I think very clearly some of the things that we need to have in mind is a very clear action plan in terms of what you need to do in India, a very clear action plans in what is the kind of objective, and be open for discussions and have no expectations when you come here for the first time. I think once those are the 2 or 3 real important things that you need to keep in mind whenever you're coming to India or any particular trade mission as such. Yeah, Ellen.
Kieran, can you just talk a little bit about keys to success in India and maybe
Sure.
opportunities as well, please?
Sure. I think the most important aspect of becoming really successful in India is because India is a big market. Normally, whenever the companies come in, they have got high expectations because we've got a huge population, which is a self-consuming population. There is always market. There's always an opportunity for any particular product and service as such. But what's unique about India is also that you need to have a very unique proposition, a USP that will basically excite these companies here. In the country as such, because please remember, with regards to IT, with regards to some of the products and services, there are a lot of options that are available in India. So that is one aspect, that you need to have something which is very, very unique with regards to the product or the service that you want to offer. I think secondly, the most important aspect that everybody needs to know is that India is not a plug and play model. Whatever works in the US, it's not necessary that will work in the Indian market as well. You might want to do some tweaks with regards to the products or the service that you want to offer. And those tweaks are maybe very, very small tweaks, which will really help you understand and will be able to cater to a larger audience as such. Of course, we are a price sensitive country, so it's also is important whether you want to look at the value game or whether you want to look at the volume game. So it's also very, very important to really understand that opportunity in terms of how do you want to place your product and what category do you want to place it for. As far as the options is concerned, as far as the three growing sectors is concerned, I think there's a lot of work that is happening in the healthcare space in India. There's a lot of work that is happening in the defense sector in India. There's a lot of work that is happening, or there's a lot of opportunity with regards to the education segment in India. Education technology is something that is really booming. Infrastructure is another segment where there's a lot of opportunity that is happening. There's a lot of opportunities, and companies are really willing to spend a lot of money behind this. Cybersecurity is another thing which is really booming. Looking at the way things are panning out, and we are in the digital age, and a lot of money is also moving digitally. India is one of the key markets also for with regards to cybersecurity and IT services as well. But remember, all of this is only possible if you have got a very unique product or a service that you can offer to those companies in India.
And this isn't fair. I didn't tell you about this, but something that's coming to my mind when I was leading the trade mission. Can you just talk a little bit about this? You just can't have one person covering all of India. Can you just talk about just that?
Sure. Dylan. So India is, like I said, it's a larger country. It's a large country. Of course, we are a huge country with a lot of population as such. It is not possible unless so what happens is most of the countries come to the mindset saying that, okay, maybe we can just start off by appointing multiple partners. But then I think that's not the way that we should be looking at it. I think most of the companies that come to India need to have a broader mindset in terms of trying to look at a particular opportunity in a region. Start off by looking at a region, or and then try and see what are the. So it's very important to look at the most attractive region for the particular product and services, and then try and expand it from there. So most of the companies who come into India would basically like to start off with a partner in India in a particular region, or maybe have a couple of partners which will cover a couple of regions as such, and then expand. Once that product and service is started expanding and started doing well, and you give it time, maybe about 6 months to a year, and then basis of that you can then spread your wings and then have multiple partners across the country as such. And that's really a fantastic way to grow. And once you really taste success with those partners, I think that is when you need to have a leap of faith and then start looking at opening up an office or a very small office here in India, and then start getting your own people onboarded. I think that's the way really most of the companies, even if there are small and medium enterprises that we have worked with. I think we have worked with more than 200 plus Virginia companies over the last decade. And there are a lot of instances where people have really started small by looking at a particular region and then expanded to the entire country. Some of them are working with their partners. Some of them also opened up their offices here in the country as well. So maybe start small and then grow big, depending on, of course, the timeline and the way the product or service is accepted in the country.
Okay, I've got one more question and I'll leave you alone.
Sure.
What about this idea of exclusivity? Because that's a lot of times our companies will get that from partners. Any thoughts on that?
So I think the most important aspect in terms of exclusivity is, I think you need to have a very clear case of the contract that you are trying to set up with a partner company, with whatever companies that you're partnering with. I think it's very, very important to do your own set of due diligence. We are also here to help you in terms of trying to do that initial set of due diligence for those companies. Have a very proper contract in place, a watertight contract in place, wherein you very clearly mention whether you want to basically set up an exclusive contract or whether you want to basically not look at exclusivity as a clause. But yes, most of the companies who are working, and if the product and services, it depends completely on the company. Most of the companies in the distributors of international companies would like to have an exclusivity clause within their contracts as such. So I think that has to be very clearly stated with those companies before you even start doing any particular business. So I think it's very important to do your own set of due diligence before working with any company. Have a very watertight contract, which is basically clear from the legal team. And then basis of that, you can then try and start building your own relationships with these companies.
Thank you, Mr. Guru of India. I really
Thank you,
appreciate
Ellen.
that.
Thank you.
And if anybody has any questions for Kiran, please put them in the Q&A box. So I just want Kiran to come on and just talk about all that goes into these trade missions. It's a huge amount of time and effort, and you can have his team basically do that for you, and make sure and set up those meetings on your company's behalf. So in addition to our so just a little bit more follow-up on our business development services. I just wanted to show you some pictures. Here's a typical trade show booth. You'll see Cezanne, who's over there on the left. That was at Mobile World Congress. He was exhibiting with us. He does basically for small and medium-sized companies. He does cybersecurity. And then here's our trade mission and trade show calendar throughout the year. So you'll see this is our fiscal year starts in July. We've got a busy schedule. And then if for some reason we can't go in country, we will be going virtually to all these countries. I do need to update this because our Canada trip has been changed, but it's just wanted to show you some of the things with the countries that we were going. We go to a lot of defense trade shows. You'll see that we're going to DSEI. It's a big show in the UK. Expo Defensa, big defense show in Colombia, an air show, Farnborough. Going to Info Security, which is a big cyber show, because these are some of the industries that obviously where Virginia excels. So we talked about our customized international research. We talked about our outsourced international business development. And now I'd like to go to our third major resource. It is grants and very specialized programs to help Virginia companies accelerate their international success. I'm going to quickly overview each one of them, and then my colleagues are going to, who run these different programs, are going to talk to you a little bit more in detail about each of them. Our flagship or our signature program is something called the Virginia Leaders in Export Trade. It's a 2-year export accelerator program. It's going to be celebrating its 20th anniversary next year. On average, companies that have participated in this program and graduated have increased their international sales by about 54%. The regional export program, I call this our 1-year mini export accelerator program. I use this as a funnel into our 2-year export accelerator program, and there's a $10,000 grant that's associated with that. Our trade show program, it's a $10,000 grant to reimburse companies to exhibit it at trade shows around the world. We have a specific program for global defense companies who have their own unique challenges when they pursue markets. And then we also administer money on behalf of the SBA. It's called the STEP grant. And normally we use it to reimburse flights, but since nobody was flying last year and a half, we've used that money to reimburse international PR and marketing expenses. So now I'm going to have my colleague, John, he's going to come over here because his computer's acting up. And John Schumann, who is responsible for our Virginia Leaders in Export Trade. John?
Good morning, everybody. My name is John Ealing Sherman. I'm the co-manager of the Valley program, sit in Tyson's Corner next to Ellen and my colleague Ed Laughlin, who you hear from in just a few minutes. But I guess I'm happy to discuss the Valley program, sort of further explain how it works and the level of influence it does have on companies in Northern Virginia and frankly across the Commonwealth in helping them accelerate their export activities. So like Ellen said, the program's been around since 2003. We've had about over 300 companies graduate from the program. It is an invitation-only program. We welcome sort of a cohort of companies every January and every July, about 12 to 15 companies in each cohort. And it is to apply, to be eligible to apply, you have to meet the following thresholds: 3 years in business, 20 full-time employees, and approximately $2 million in sales. If you hit those metrics, you are eligible to apply, and you're accepted, and you join for a 2-year commitment, at which point I or my colleague Richard Miller in Richmond will be taking care of you throughout your tenure. It is another way to think about the program, so it builds upon the core resources of what we offer. So if you go back to what Alan said, the market research, the global network consultants such as Kiran, the trade missions and trade show opportunities, and we add some extra layers of support. Those are a $30,000 grant. These are $30,000 grant to offset export-related expenses over 2 years. It's not per year, but it's over 2 years. I can tell you what the grant does not cover. It does not cover airfare, hotels, or incidentals, but it does cover the cost of a market research project. It does cover the cost of signing up for a trade mission, or it does cover the cost of engagement with our trade partners, which I will describe in a few minutes. In addition, and probably most importantly, the Valet program offers everything we do on behalf of a company is crystallized into what is called a plan of action. A plan of action is an export strategy document that we work with the client to help craft and shape and execute against over 2 years. I think we all agree that the ability to execute against a business plan of some kind, whether it's domestic market, Virginia market, or certainly international markets, is advisable. So an export, the Valet plan of action is market or country specific. We do not encourage companies to pursue 10 markets at once. Typically, we start with 2 or 3, sometimes even 1 market. And we literally define the objective for that market, and we list out the action items they need to accomplish in order to move the ball down the field, if you will. So the plan of action document is a living document. So let's say, for example, a company enters the Valet program and they select India, they select Canada, they select Brazil as their priority markets where they want to sell their products or services to. We define the objective for the Indian market. It may be different than the Brazilian market. These companies may already be doing business in the Canadian market. So each country's respective plan is going to be unique to that particular company and their circumstances. And then we define the action items. For example, in India, does the company need to identify a reseller? Do they need to better understand the regulatory requirements in order to do business there? In Brazil, it may be, do they need to learn how to navigate the import duties, which can be significant? So the plan of action is extremely customized. Is it actionable? My job is to help companies sort of move through their respective plans of action over 2 years. So that's really, a core component. So in review, the market research, travel to market, the grant, the plan of action, and in addition, there's another resource called the trade partners. These are private sector service companies. We have about 24 of them, I think. Lawyers, bankers, marketing firms, translation firms, corporate strategy specialists, translation companies, freight forwarders, you name it. These are all practitioners and experts in their field who can help fill the gaps in a company's business plan. I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a banker, Ellen is not a translation provider, but we have access to best-in-class service providers who are under contract with us and are obliged to offer any Virginia company or Valet company a measure of discounted services if they sign up for an engagement. For example, if you are close to executing a deal to sell your products to the Middle East or to South America or to India, and the deal will be executed with a letter of credit. Many Virginia companies bank with regional banks who may not have the bandwidth or the expertise to execute a letter of credit. Well, guess what? We have SunTrust, we have BB&T, and other banks we work with their international banking departments who can help a Virginia company execute a letter of credit. We have law firms who can help you who can sort of review your contract. If you are close to signing a distributor in Saudi Arabia, well, they have a different legal system there. So it may be worth your while to have a law firm review your distributor contract for that market. So these trade partners are really a critical resource, and we valet companies have access to them. Any fee or any cost to have an engagement with a trade partner, a valet company can use their $30,000 to offset the cost of that engagement. So looking at this slide, so in review, if you look at the right-hand column, it's a 2-year program. Companies receive the executive training, the international sales plan development, which is the plan of action, access to consultants like Kiran, travel to market, and so on. The $30,000 is a reimbursement setup. So if you want to translate your marketing materials into Spanish or into Japanese, you pay the vendor, you send me a copy of the invoice and the proof of payment, and then Virginia cuts you a check. Like I said, this program's been around since 2003. Over 300 companies have graduated from the program, and we just only recently we are now allowing graduates to reapply and return to the program under certain parameters. But it is a very popular program. We recruit from across Virginia, not just Northern Virginia. We recruit from across industries, defense companies, software companies, health IT companies, traditional manufacturing companies, and so on. Looking at the left side of the slide, if you look at that sort of circle of success, this is what I go through with companies when I sort of try to create a narrative about why this is important. So starting at the top right-hand corner, business planning, this is really important. And I urge companies to think about, have they really had the sort of sanity check discussion, internal discussion, to make sure they have the bandwidth, the budget, and the people in place to pursue export sales. We all hope that a company has checkmarked against all those requirements, because exporting, the sales cycle is going to be longer. It's going to be more complex. So really, you need to be all in. This is not a sort of a side project that we hope you get to. We hope this is a core focus of your company. Market research. Market research, you've heard from Kiran, you've heard how Ellen has characterized the importance of market research. And every valet orientation, I always ask the room, how many of you companies have a dedicated market research person on staff? Raise your hand. And guess what? No one raises their hand. It is an underestimated and overlooked resource. So market research is really important. And market research, in addition to how Kiran described it and Ellen described it, it's really about, another way to look at it is identifying what markets you should focus on. And we do offer every incoming valet company sort of a top markets research project where we help them identify those markets. They look at a map of the world. How are they going to consolidate or pick 2 or 3? Well, we have a way of doing that for you. Swinging around the circle, the expert guidance, those are the trade partners, those are the law firms, the accounting firms, the freight forwarders that you have a chance to work with if you choose to. There's no obligation to work with our trade partners. Just remember that they are obliged to offer you a measure of discounted services if you want. And then finally, travel to market. You know, I always say, and I think everybody would agree, that sales is a contact sport. You have, at some point, you're going to have to get in the plane and meet with and confer with and negotiate with a potential distributor, a reseller, a customer, an end user, and so on. Obviously, the last 12 to 14 months, travel to market has happened over a screen. We've engaged and we've pivoted our traditional trade mission calendar to virtual meetings, which has been successful. It's been different. It took a while to get used to. I think companies have really enjoyed at least the initial screening of a prospect or building a relationship overseas. They have found they can accomplish a lot of that over Zoom or over Teams. So when you put all of this together, you know, the internal sanity check at the beginning, the business planning, selecting your top markets, figuring out the gaps in your business plan where the trade partners can fill those gaps, and then finally figuring out when is the right time to travel to market, who am I going to meet with, and if India is a market of importance to you, you've heard how Kiran can help you. And with that, that is sort of the Vale story. I'll give you sort of a couple of examples, client examples of companies that we have successfully worked with. One of them is a company called Ensco in Springfield. We helped them identify a reseller in South America, covering at least 3 South American countries for their flagship human heart detector surveillance. It's a heart detector piece of software that helps mitigate smuggling and cross-border incursions and so on. Another company, Biomix Sciences in Charlottesville. They are in the business of exporting nutritional supplements, which is a heavily regulated market in the EU. And we literally did 28 individual market assessments, regulatory market assessments, to help Biomix Sciences figure out which EU countries had the most appropriate regulatory environment. And from there, they're able to pick and choose where to export their products. So Ellen, with that, I will turn it back over to you.
Thank you, John. So basically, if you're serious about international trade, we got the program. We got the program for you. And here's just a picture of the ballet companies that started in January of 2020, as John said. So we take in classes, they apply, and so about 12 companies get selected in January, 12 get selected in July, 12 graduate in January, 12 graduate in July. So on average, we have about 50 companies participating in our 2-year export accelerator. And this is just a picture of the companies who started in January of 2020. And again, they're from all over the Commonwealth of Virginia and represent a ton of different industries as well. So now it is my pleasure to introduce my colleague, Ed Laughlin, who runs our global defense program. And I'm going to have Ed just tell you just quickly why he's qualified to do this. He's had a lot of experience in this market, and now he's putting that experience to work, helping small and medium-sized defense and aerospace companies pursue international markets. So Ed?
Thank you for that, Ellen, and good morning, everyone. Hope you're getting a lot out of this. I know every time I listen to Ellen, I learn something new, and I've been around for a while. So in any case, the Global Defense Program, as you can imagine, this exists because Virginia is heavily dependent on aerospace, defense, and security companies and the markets, principally here, in the Washington, U.S. government, things like that. But if you remember back during the Great Recession, you had sequestration, everything like that, where suddenly the defense markets that everybody kind of in the industry took for granted, Uncle Sam cut across the board and for a number of years. And a lot of what happened was that the giant companies, the Lockheeds, the Raytheons of the world, whatnot, they had outsourced over the years many of their processes, parts supply, things along that lines, and services engineering to the small and medium companies. Well, during the Great Recession and sequestration, they brought it all back in, and that really hurt a lot of small and medium businesses, not only in Virginia, but across the country as well. So the Department of Defense at the time put together special grant programs, which the various states could apply for and then utilize to help within their state the small and medium companies that were being hurt. This turned out to be a very successful program, particularly here in Virginia. And so when that money dried up at the end, when the recession kind of came to a close, the state legislature, God bless them, put up the money to continue the program and actually expand it. So that's how I was hired. And then I do have a colleague, Brian Moody, who looks after Southern Virginia. I have Northern Virginia. And we continue to this day with this global defense program. My background a little bit, I started out at Lockheed Martin doing market research and analysis. And then I moved into the sales side, helping to sell C-130 aircraft into Africa and Western Europe. I then moved on later to do commercial aircraft for the old British Aerospace. And ultimately, after they merged into BAE Systems, I moved to their US corporate headquarters, helping in they called business development and strategy on the international side, helping our small and medium divisions move into exporting. And so I've taken that experience and brought it now to the market here for VEDP. Now, what is the Global Defense Program? It's kind of the softer side of the Valet program. It's a one-year program. There's a $10,000 grant associated with it. But what makes it unique is the fact that Brian and myself, with our various backgrounds in defense, and in Brian's case, also a number of years as a Marine, we bring our knowledge of the peculiarities of doing defense exporting, compliance being one of the big issues, and licensing, things along that line. But we also act as a consultant, working hand in hand with our overseas contractors and focusing all of the resources that Ellen has talked about into these bullet points here. I'm not going to read all through them, but you get the drift. So that that focused attention can be brought to all of these small and medium companies. So what does that mean? For example, there's one company I work with called Core Performance. They do basically personal cooling vests and devices. Imagine you're sitting out on the ramp at an airport on a day like this, for example, down at National or wherever. Think about how hot those guys are, so, slinging bags and servicing aircraft. Well, they provide personal cooling devices that you wear to obviously keep you cool and that you're able to work in this sort of environment. So what we did with the Global Defense Program is they utilized some of that $10,000, since really there was not a lot of travel to be had in the past year, to really focus on trying to upgrade their website. A lot of our companies, particularly the small and medium ones, have to depend on their websites for growth. So while they had a very perfunctory website, they needed to do more in terms of upgrading the platform for exchange rates, how they ordered, shipping, things along that line. So a lot of that grant went into that purpose. And in fact, it was so successful, they opened up several new markets in terms of attracting attention from places like Japan and France, where they have not gone before. And lo and behold, their international revenue went up something on the order of 20% over the year time span of the program. They've now graduated, they finished their 1 year in this program with the Global Defense, and we moved them into our e-commerce. And I can't remember, Ellen, if you talked about e-commerce, but there are many companies out there that are, they have the little shopping cart, and I'm working with them now to even further upgrade their website. And eventually, later this year, we anticipate them starting to travel. They've just received some market research on a couple particular markets that hopefully, as a result, they'll want to join the trade mission later this year. So these are all things that are available to defense companies. And everything I've talked about here is also can be translated over to what's called the REP program that Ellen basically talked about. Same sort of concept, except for commercial markets. And again, the 1 year, $10,000 grant. So that's all I have to say on the subject right now. Look forward to any questions that come up later. Ellen, back to you.
Thank you, Ed. And thanks for mentioning the e-commerce program. If you have clients that are in e-commerce, they've got 5 full-time people, would love to know about them and make sure that they understand the resources available to help them pursue international markets. I'm working with a company I just got yesterday. They've done a couple of things to increase their Canadian sales. They've now got a product called Zonos on their website, which gives people the landed costs into Canada. So if you're a Canadian and buying something, you know exactly what it's going to cost when you buy it, which sounds ridiculous, but in a lot of e-commerce, you don't know that. And so people end up not actually wanting the product when it lands in their country, and they can and they can just reject it. And then the company who's the e-commerce company, yes, that has to eat those costs. And the other thing that there's some programs through FedEx and a variety of logistics providers that, depending on what type of product you're selling, can really lower your shipping costs, which is a big expense when you're selling online. So we've got a great program for that, and glad to talk to any of e-commerce companies about that. Just to wrap things up, I just wanted to put some Northern Virginia companies up on the screen who have taken advantage of our resources. And again, you'll see they represent all sorts of different types of companies: software companies, defense companies, manufacturing companies, and they've taken advantage of a variety of our resources. So I'm just going to end with that. You've heard about all our resources. We have, I think, I know wonderful resource companies are always, I have to say, I guarantee you that companies will be thrilled to know about us and to work with us. I mean, who can pass up a wonderful $10,000 grant at a very minimum? But we encourage you to reach out, and we will make sure, no matter where you are, if you have clients anywhere in Virginia, we'll make sure that they are taking advantage and connected with our counterparts around the Commonwealth. And with that, I do not see any in the Q&A at this point in time. But if anybody does have any questions, we're happy to take them.
Wonderful. And actually, Ellen, I do have some questions here. One that I'll throw out there. This may be appropriate for Ed. Where are you guys seeing the hottest defense markets right now?
And there are a number of areas, as you can imagine. Sadly, it's both good and bad. There's always a market out there for the defense. What's particularly interesting right now is that the UK has just, because of really Brexit, they're trying to stand fully on their own feet. So they've actually are passing the largest defense budget in a generation in the UK. And so we're, along with our consulting firm, OCO, are looking very much at that market and trying to support a number of companies in that area. In fact, interestingly enough, in this coming year, we have about 5 different events going on in the UK: DSCI, Farnborough, of course. We have a trade mission going in the spring to the UK, as well as, Ellen, I suddenly can't remember what you're doing next spring in London.
Oh, cyber. I'm doing the cyber info. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So the UK, particularly in this year, is getting a lot of attention. Eastern Europe, Poland, Romania tend to be very interesting markets. They're shifting away from old Soviet, Russian equipment. They like US products. And what's particularly interesting when I talk to small and medium companies, yes, you may want to avoid, unless you can partner, you're going to avoid having to run into Lockheed, things like that. So often what my small and medium companies like to do is to go into smaller markets, a lot in Central America and the northern parts of South America, counter narcotics, training, counterterrorism, because quite frankly, $1 million or a $2 million contract is big stuff for a small and medium company, but Lockheed isn't going to get out of bed for that kind of thing. So we look at a lot of those kind of markets. Eastern Europe sometimes can be that way. And we also have some great consultants, though, that if you have the right product, the right price point, the Middle East, Saudi, which can be difficult and time consuming, there are a lot of good opportunities. Our consulting firm that we work with, our partner contractor, UAE is great. And also Australia tends to be very interesting as well.
Excellent, excellent. And for those that are joining us today, feel free to use the Q&A feature to send any questions. Otherwise, I've got a few here that I'm still working on. Just an incredible presentation today. One for Kieran. Obviously, great information to sort of set expectations for what businesses should have in mind as they set their eyes towards the Indian market. Anything else that you would share as far as pricing your products and services as you approach the Indian market that companies should be mindful of?
Yeah, thank you, Charles. On the pricing, I think everybody knows. I think it's not a big secret anymore that we are a very, very price sensitive country. We tend to really look at the value of the product, and then basis of that have our own judgments in terms of the overall price. And what is also happening, and to most of the international companies who do come to India, are not very, I would say, are not very flexible in terms of when it comes to the pricing of any particular product is concerned. Because I think the way you need to look at it is what is the kind of business that you want to be in, whether you want to basically be in the volume business or in terms of the value business as such. So it's very, very important that you need to try and see whether you can actually design a product which is set for India. It might need some tweaks in the design stage of the product as such, but then if you are able to do that, but a part of the story, then there is absolutely a huge potential for any particular product / service in India as such. So I think it's very, very important that you need to have an open mind and need to be flexible in terms of trying to understand what your product is, what your service is, and then you need to price it according to the Indian market as such. And you might not want to come with a rigid mindset saying that, okay, I am a premium seller in the US or in other global markets, and I want to be a premium seller here in India as well. Yes, that is possible until unless it's absolutely unique and the product or service is not available in India. Other than that, I think you need to be flexible to make sure that you are open to really tweaking it a bit and making sure that you create a product for the Indian market, because it's more of the volume that we're talking about.
I do want to mention, I want to mention, Charles, because I think it's important that we do have, as John talked about, some of our trade partners with specialties in international business. We have a trade partner that specializes in pricing around the world, and so they can help, because that's always a big challenge. Is what do you charge for your product or service? So we've got resources that can really walk through that and help companies figure out how they can figure out what the right price is to charge in different markets.
Absolutely. That is just fantastic. As we talked about earlier in the presentation, these are not folks that are looking at international markets. These are not resources that they typically have on their staff. People aren't investing this in their own organization as a dedicated staff normally, especially the folks that we serve. So to have these resources available is just fantastic. So glad that we were able to share this information with our community today. And we're always looking at opportunities to be able to share resources, opportunities for our members in the business community we serve. John, another question for you. With the accelerator program, that was great to be able to learn about that. When should companies consider, what is really the right time for companies to consider applying for that 2-year program?
Yeah, a great question, and I wish I had all day to answer it because there's no one right answer. So the reason we have, if you remember, I mentioned the thresholds, right? So we all learned in college that, or in business school or business classes, that you should really only consider international markets once you have a firm footing in the domestic market. So I can tell you this, that the Valley program is not for startups. That's why we have the thresholds: 3 years in operation, $2 million in sales, and 20 full-time employees. Now, we can make an exception on occasion. For example, a software company that you have some coders who write software. It's not as labor intensive as making a product, for example. So you could have a very compelling, aggressive company with a wonderful new product. It said 18 full-time employees or 17 full-time employees. We will review their application on a case-by-case basis. But generally speaking, we do, because of the complexities involved in selling overseas, even to Canada, you have to have the appetite for a longer sales cycle or added complexity. We do ask for certain profile of applicant. I would say that, another way to look at this question is in relation to Ed's question regarding what markets are hot. Well, we can only control what we can control. We can't control the business cycles around the world. And business cycles change. A few years ago, India was in a sort of a bit of a downturn. Now it's sort of coming back up. The pandemic has been very chaotic in terms of trying to predict or anticipate opportunities around the world. I think it's true to say that those countries, those markets that are moving quickly to be vaccinated, maybe will return online quicker than other parts of the world. So the opportunities and the business cycles will crest in certain parts of the world, and then we try and anticipate within those markets that are cresting, what are the markets? How do companies need to adjust in the post-COVID landscape, right? How do they need to adjust their product configuration, product development, how they market their products and services? You know, we think about that all the time. We think about what's around the corner, if you will, in international business. We try to understand what works and hasn't worked in certain markets. It is true that another way to think about it is, well, take what's worked in the US. Is your distributor in the US, is that a profile or a model you want to replicate in another market? Maybe that will work. Maybe that's a start. Do you want to be a loss leader, or do you want to be, a first company in the market? Do you want to, what is called fast follower? Do you want to be a second or third company to a market? If your competition is achieving great success in a country, well, take a look at that and why. Well, what are the dynamics that are shaping one of your competitors' success in Western Europe, for example? And maybe you can learn from their experience and then come in behind them, or not. I mean, there's, like I said at the outset, I wish I could synthesize this into one clear, compelling answer, but there's a lot of variables to think about. But that's why we're here to help you.
If I might embellish on that just a bit, our other programs, whether it's the REP program, my Global Defense program, e-commerce, and the like, these are great kind of introductory pathways into Valet. It's a good way. You spend a year, you get to know us, our processes, we get to know you, and your commitment to the international marketplace. Often it's a bit haphazard when we start with the one-year programs, but we help a company kind of formalize some of their processes. And once they're ready to commit to international, it makes then a good segue into Valet. And then in a few cases, there's such great momentum that's built up in the 2 years you would be with John, that you might even come back to the REP program or my GDP program as kind of a third year of Valet. So there's a lot of ways these programs play off one another.
That's incredible information. Again, thank you guys. Just a wonderful morning this morning. Learned so much, Ellen. Every time we discuss the services that you and your team offers, I learn something new every day, and it's just a great opportunity for us to be able to allow our members and our business community to understand the wealth of possibilities as we fix our gaze to the future and are looking to just really accelerate business development here in our region. These are an amazing resource that everyone ought to know about. Looks like we have gone through the Q&As here. Ellen, any final comments as we wrap up our presentation here today?
Oh yeah, that's good. John just mentioned, we do have a website, exportvirginia.org, that talks about where we have all our trade missions and trade shows and variety of webinars on a million different topics. So I encourage people to look there. But I think the most part is just reach out and let us know. We are happy to talk to any company that's just even thinking about international, because there's just, and you may not be ready to do it for another year or two, but we can start some research now, and it's sort of taken off your plate and start looking at maybe potentially top markets for you, and then do a little bit of digging in whatever those top markets are. So, and then when you have the time and energy, we can start actually really proactively going after those markets. And just to your point, Charles, your membership is a lot of service providers. Accountants tend to be really good referral sources, maybe because they can see where see where these companies are selling. And if anybody has, if you're a lawyer or a banker or an accountant that has companies that you know are already selling international, please make sure that they know about these resources, because I have to say the state really isn't into advertising and marketing. And so we find these, we sort of get connected with these contacts through service. A lot of service providers do that. So just direct them our way so we can make sure that that their Virginia companies are leveraging all the resources available to them.
Absolutely, great point. You know, as much as our members love opportunities to grow and find new businesses, they certainly want to retain their customers and clients, and being able to make a referral or share information about your services is a great way to keep someone, your client, for years to come. So yeah, great point. Thank you for mentioning that.
And I should just point out something too, is that if any of the service providers are doing any sort of international work, that can be reimbursed with our grants. So if you're an accountant that is doing international accounting for your client, like I just had a client that was reimbursed. There's a really cool program called IC Disc, which is a tax credit. My client just got $50,000 that they had no idea about because they were doing R&D and they sell it a ton internationally. And that combination was allowed them to get this $50,000 tax credit. So any service provider that is that is doing international business, our grants can reimburse that as well. So that's important to know.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you for sharing. And we do have a community resources section to our website where we have a link to the VEDP, and we'll certainly expand that to include the additional information that you provided here today. And to bring things home, again, thank you, Ellen, John, Ed, Kieran, for contributing to today's presentation. Fantastic information. We're so proud to have you as part of our legislative series. The Chamber's legislative series is a quarterly programming. So for those that enjoyed today's program, please take a look at our website, restonchamber.org. We will announce the fall legislative series program in a few months. Thank you again to Comcast Business, Inova, Miller Musselman CPAs, Sandy Spring Bank, and Walsh, Colucci, Lubley, and Walsh. So on behalf of staff here at the Greater Reston Chamber of Commerce, my name is Charles Kapoor, and I want to thank our team for presenting today's event and wish everyone a wonderful and productive rest of your day. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.